Driving home after a dreadful day at work has always been a relief for me. Knowing I'm only a 30-minute drive away from escaping my reality, a dreadful job, brings me even greater peace. The night only got better because I'd be driving in the rain. Contrary to popular belief, I actually enjoy driving in the rain. It adds to the melancholy effect, the sensation of escaping from a bleak existence. This evening, I had stayed behind later at work to finish some extra tasks. This weekend would be a 4-day weekend, and I didn't want to be stuck working on a day I could be relaxing instead. I packed up all my belongings and locked the office up. It was about 7:30 p.m. at this point, and I couldn't wait to get home. Exhausted after a 12-hour day, I decided to take the shorter route home, which would lead me through a road I didn't know well. Even though I would be cutting my driving time by 10 to 15 minutes, I was apprehensive about driving down this road. It's one of those roads that twists and turns and has steep drop-offs. If you ever veer off the road, it's a complete disaster. It also doesn't help that you get zero reception on this road, and it's extremely isolated. I was about 15 minutes into my drive, making it past all the initial sharp turns, and only had 5 minutes left before getting on the main road back to my house when I saw something blocking the road up ahead. I was forced to make a full stop when I noticed a car blocking the entire right lane and part of the left lane. I couldn't get around this car without basically having to go off-roading. I paused for a moment, contemplating the best option. Despite feeling overwhelming guilt and deciding to be a decent human being, I chose to grab my flashlight and walk out to see if the person needed help. I opened my car door and could immediately feel the biting cold of the winter air. I made my presence known, disregarding my headlights being a dead giveaway, and let whoever was there know that I'm here for any assistance. No one responded, but instead of just leaving, I decided to walk towards the car. I was startled when I saw a woman sitting in the driver's seat. We locked eyes, and she immediately opened the car door and let me know that her car broke down and she needed help. I was a bit taken aback since I called out a couple of times, and she didn't say anything back. I chalked it up to her being anxious and afraid of being out on her own. She began to ask me if I could help her check under the hood to see what the problem might be. I told her I'm not the best with cars, and it's best if I drive her into town where the reception is better. She kept insisting I take a look under the hood and try to figure out the problem. At this point, I was getting a bad feeling and I wasn't feeling comfortable. My gut was telling me she was up to no good, and she kept insisting I look under her hood. I told her I'd be right back and pretended to check if I had my tools in the trunk of my car. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked off to the side and started biting her fingernails. Not wanting to give her the idea I was about to bail, I walked about 2/3 of the way to the car, but the other third, I ran for my life. I put my car in drive and sped off as fast as I could. The woman began to scream at me and curse at me, but I didn't care. I had to get myself to safety. As I drove off, I could see the woman in the side mirror, waving her arms in frustration and screaming. But her craziness wasn't the worst of it. 2 very large men stood up from crouching behind the bushes closest to her car. My car isn't the fastest or in the best shape, but I put my foot down on the gas, risking potential harm to my engine. The rest of the ride home, I kept checking in the rearview mirror to make sure I wasn't being followed. Luckily, nothing else happened after that. The rest of the night, I lay in bed, thanking God that I listened to my gut and left when I did. The woman was trying to set me up and use her car as a distraction before attacking her victims. I'm glad I made it out safely, and I hope no one else fell for their trap. Enjoying the content? Subscribe now for more. The road ahead of me stretches long and strangely dreary on this rainy night. It's so dark outside that you can't even see your own hand in front of your face. And let me tell you, the stars might as well be on vacation, because there isn't a single one shining tonight. Just me, my old beat-up car, and the endless stretch of road ahead. Some weird song is blaring from the radio, but I can't even make out the words. It's like some eerie background noise that's adding to the creepy vibe of this whole situation. The only other sound is the annoying roar of my engine chugging along like it's on its last legs. I'm driving down this road, feeling like I'm in the middle of nowhere, when suddenly I start feeling drowsy. I mean, really drowsy. The kind of tiredness that creeps up on you like a thief in the night. Next thing I know, I'm practically nodding off at the wheel, barely able to keep my eyes open. That's when I realize I need to pull over. I can't keep driving like this. It's just not safe. So, I spot a little clearing on the side of the road and decide to park there for a bit. Maybe catch some shut-eye and recharge before hitting the road again. I lean my head on the steering wheel, using my hands as a makeshift pillow, and close my eyes. The rain is drumming softly on the roof of the car, and I start drifting off into dreamland. But then, out of nowhere, I snap awake. I don't know what woke me up, but I've got this strange feeling in the pit of my stomach, like I'm being watched. I glance around, but all I can see is darkness outside the car windows. Still, I can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone out here. Suddenly, I hear it. A soft rustling sound coming from the trees nearby. My heart starts pounding in my chest as I strain my ears, trying to figure out what it could be. Maybe it's just an animal, I tell myself. But then I remember the stories I've heard about this stretch of road, stories about strange disappearances and mysterious happenings. I sit there in the darkness, frozen with fear, listening to the rustling getting closer and closer. And then, just when I think I can't take it anymore, it stops. Everything goes quiet again, like nothing ever happened. I don't know how long I sat there, too scared to move. But eventually, I muster up the courage to start the car again and get the heck out of there. As I drive away, I can't shake the feeling that whatever was out there in the darkness is still watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And let me tell you, I've never been so relieved to see the lights of home shining in the distance. But even now, as I sit here in the safety of my own house, I can't help but wonder what was out there in the darkness that night, and whether I'll ever know the truth. It was raining, foggy, and the fog was so thick it could have been cut with a knife. It was the kind of night that makes you want to stay in bed. But there I was, so tired, driving down that deserted road in the middle of nowhere. I was working late, and the rain was pouring down like some personal vendetta against my windshield wipers. My eyes were heavy, drooping from exhaustion, but I had to keep going. And here I saw her, a bus ahead of us, its red taillights barely visible through the fog. At first I didn't think anything of it. Maybe it was a late-night school trip or something. But then I noticed something strange. A few children on the bus were asleep, their heads hanging out of the windows. It was past midnight due to crying out loud. What were a group of children doing here at this hour? I guess curiosity got the best of me. I mean, who wouldn't be curious in a situation like this? So, against my better judgment, I decided to follow them. The road twisted and turned through the forest, the trees looming like giant shadows in the darkness. My headlights barely penetrated the darkness, but I kept going, my heart beating in my chest. That's when things started to get really weird. I saw the bus pull down a narrow dirt road and disappear into the trees. I hesitated for a moment, my foot hovering over the brake pedal. What the hell was going on? But before I knew it, I was following them down the trail, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. I had to know what was going on, and I had to make sure these kids were safe. The path wound its way deeper into the forest, the trees closing in on me like silent sentinels. I could hear strange noises in the dark, leaves rustling, branches snapping beneath my feet. And then I saw him, a clearing in front of us, lit by flickering torches. My stomach churned when I realized what I was looking at. It was like a campsite, a makeshift village in the middle of nowhere. But it wasn't the campsite that scared me, it was the people. There were men and women walking around, their faces obscured by shadow. In the middle of all this, the children coming off the bus were surrounded by a circle of torches. I felt sick to my stomach watching it, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. It was like something out of a nightmare, with the children standing there in their pajamas, looking lost and afraid. I knew I had to do something, help them somehow. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my phone and called the police and told them everything I saw. It seemed like hours before the police finally arrived, sirens cutting through the silence of the night. The forces stormed the campsite, arrested those responsible, and rescued the children from their clutches. But even when the police took the gang away in handcuffs, I couldn't shake my uneasy feeling. What were these people planning to do to these children? What about those who were not found? It was a true horror story, the kind that sends shivers down your spine even years later. As I drove home that night, the rain still hitting my windshield, I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors were lurking in the dark, waiting to be uncovered. It was after midnight, a rainy night, one of those nights where the darkness seemed thicker than usual, swallowing up the edges of your vision. I was driving my old truck down US Route 66, the same route I had been on for a decade. The rain was pounding relentlessly on the windshield, creating a hypnotic rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The road stretched out before me, empty and desolate, like a forgotten road leading to nowhere. The only company I had was the sound of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. It was that night that made you feel small and insignificant in the vastness of the universe. I was lost in thought when I saw him, a figure standing on the side of the road, barely visible through the curtain of rain. As I got closer, I could see the silhouette of a man, hunched over and leaning heavily on a crutch. He looked to be in his 60s, with a weather-beaten face and tired eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of stories. I stopped without hesitation, my truck's headlights casting an eerie glow around us. The man was limping towards me, his movements slow and deliberate. He leaned close to the window, his breath filling the glass as he spoke. "Hello, son," he said in a hoarse, raspy voice. "Would you mind giving an old man a lift?" She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do, but something in the way he looked at me, with a mixture of desperation and longing, touched my heart. "Sure," I replied, opening the passenger door. As he took the seat next to me, I caught a whiff of old cigarette smoke mixed with something else, something metallic and sharp. The smell made my stomach churn, but I ignored it, chalking it up to the rain playing tricks on my senses. We drove in silence for a while, the only sounds being the hum of the engine and the constant pounding of the rain on the roof of the truck. But then, suddenly, the old man started speaking. He spoke in riddles and half-truths, his words weaving a tangled web of confusion around us. He asked me strange questions, probing areas of my life that I didn't feel comfortable discussing with a stranger. I tried to respond to his inquiries politely, but he was harsh, and his piercing gaze never strayed from my face. It was as if he could see right through me, right into the depths of my soul. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any weirder, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. He lit one without asking, and the lighter's flame cast sinister shadows over his wrinkled features. As he took a long breath, he moved closer to me, his breath hot on my ear. "Have you ever thought about death, son?" he whispered, his voice sending shivers down my spine. "About what lies beyond the veil of this world?" I shook my head, trying to shake off the uncomfortable feeling that was creeping over me like a suffocating blanket. But the old man wasn't finished yet. He continued to tell me about his confrontation with mortality and the darkness that consumed him from the inside out. He talked about pain and regret, about missed opportunities and lost dreams. And then, when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, he dropped the bomb. "I'm thinking of ending all this, son," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tonight, here on this lonely stretch of highway." My blood ran cold at his words, and I felt a shiver creep up my spine, and it had nothing to do with the rain outside. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to drive away as fast as I could, leave this strange old man behind and never look back. But another part of me couldn't bear the thought of leaving him alone in his moment of despair. So, against my better judgment, I did the only thing I could think of. I reached for my phone and called 911, my hands shaking as I waited for someone on the other end to answer. When the operator finally answered, I explained the situation as best I could and prayed that help would arrive in time. And then, just like that, the old man was gone. He disappeared into thin air without a trace, leaving behind nothing but the smell of cigarette smoke and the echo of his painful words. I sat there in stunned silence, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for the police to arrive. When they did, she told them everything, from the strange roadside encounter to the old man's creepy confession. But deep down, I knew that some mysteries were never meant to be solved. As I drove away into the night, leaving the empty highway behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just escaped something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined.